Let's go!
Marlins fans, and welcome to this edition of Fish Stripes Live, presented by La Pop. That's LAPOP, La Pop. And as always, we are joined here today with our guests, our co-hosts, Kevin Barral, Eli Sussman, Alex Carver, and our guest today, Mr. Navi from the Marlins Discord. Guys, how are we feeling for tonight's episode? Spring games are finally caught up and really getting into that baseball season.
I think the best way to say is it's not about wins and losses. I think Noah summed it up pretty well in the article. Just feel good that spring is back. We're seeing Marlins baseball. We're seeing all these new faces. We're seeing the growing pains of this defense with Jazz in center, Arise at second, Segura at third. Besides that, I mean, it's been fun. We had the chance to see Yuri Perez pitch on a major league mound. We've seen Johnny Cueto. We've seen Sandy, which we'll see very soon. We have some pretty good matchups coming up and a lot of storylines that have gone down through the spring. So it's been fun. It's been real fun to watch these here at home. And, you know, we've had great coverage from Isaac Noah so far.
Yeah, it's in a lot of ways, it's been exactly as advertised with this team. Not in every way. In some ways, in a lot of ways, it's actually been worse than advertised. But the defense has been obviously probably the main thing on people's minds and on people's eyes. Even if you can't watch the games, even just listening to them, you understand the variety of plays that are not looking great, which is a fun contrast because I think I remember at this time, maybe it was 2 years ago, not last year, but last time we had kind of a full spring training, that this defense was supposed to be like the strength of the team not that long ago. They have just transformed this roster in a way that is trying to boost the offense at the expense of the defense, unfortunately. And to this point in the spring, long story short, they have the worst on-base percentage and the worst slugging percentage of all MLB teams this so far in spring training. So there's been no offensive improvement whatsoever, and therefore the team as a whole has been very uninspiring, kind of with the exception of the starting pitching. Like that's one thing that's supposed to be the strength of this team, and so far looking relatively good in that front.
Yeah, just to expand a little, even the relief pitching has looked pretty good. Some of these young guys, we've seen Sean Reynolds, he's looked good. We'll probably talk about him. Josh Simpson looked all right. George Soriano, shout out to him. Dropped the article today on him, looks good. I mean, a lot of the pitching looks pretty good. And the 1-4-1 record is not fun to see, but it's not about wins and losses. It's about seeing the development of these guys, seeing how they mesh together. And you really hope that we see a very good, strong game from these guys very soon, because in maybe a week or two, you have Arise, Gene Segura, Sandy, Cueto, and some other guys going out to the WBC, and that's really when it's going to get even tougher when they come back, when they're no longer adjusted to the current rules of Major League Baseball. Because keep in mind, WBC does not have the rules that we're seeing right now with pitch clock, bigger bases, ban of shift. So it's going to be very, very tough, but let's hope they could get adjusted to it. And luckily, Jazz isn't going, so we're going to be seeing him a lot in center field, and it's been interesting so far.
Yeah. And with that, Navi, as our special guest, tell us a little bit what you're seeing so far at spring training, maybe who's impressed you and everything going on that you're seeing.
Right. So I haven't been at the park, but I've been catching the GoPro streams from Kalasilov when I can at work. Thankfully, in my office, I can sit by myself, have it on a different window. Sometimes have a little meeting to go to. But I have been watching kind of the first 4 or 5 years of most games. Um, to me, I'm super excited that we're seeing maybe the resurgence of Avisail Garcia. Maybe the odd year comeback year thing for Avisail is worth the hype. Is true to its worth. Um, it's been kind of underwhelming. The defense, as Eli covered, it's lowest on slugging and OPS. But defense also not fun today. They had that moment with Braxton Garrett and Garrett Cooper. I almost said Braxton Cooper, where where they couldn't connect on a infield ground ball. But I think from what I've seen, the pitching is going to be the strong suit of the team this year. Again,
Yeah. And today there was a game, as you're seeing in the background. That's not live, but there was a game
Right.
today. One of us in here was at the game. Mr. Alex Carver, you were there. You were in the press box. You were watching this, and I'm guessing you maybe were the only person at this stadium besides you and Noah and the players. But tell us a little bit about the game and what you saw there.
Yeah, sparse crowd today. Not that many people there. It's daytime, afternoon on a weekday, so most people are at work. But some fans, like I said, kind of a sparse crowd, but that's all right. The lineup that they threw out today, there was not that many starters in it because most of the starters played yesterday. So they threw out a lineup of mostly depth guys and minor leaguers to back them up. Yeah, I saw some good things though. You asked Navi this. He said, Avi, I really want to tell you guys about what we've seen from Jesus Sanchez. That guy's been really good since games have started. That guy's been really, really good. He's had great at bats. Even when he's out, he's making good contact. His approach looks a little bit better. He's working deeper counts. He's not pulling everything. He's starting to go oppo. His hit today was oppo off of a lefty, Mackenzie Gore. Really, really good to see that from Jesus Sanchez. I asked Skip about it today. And he was like, yeah, he knows he's not guaranteed a spot on the opening day roster. So, he understands that and he's coming out and doing his best and he's not letting the pressure get to him, but he's just playing baseball. So really, really great to see from Jesus Sanchez, who not too long ago was striking out a ton, trying to pull everything, upon his call up to the major leagues last year. So yeah, this guy wants a roster spot. He wants to be on this team. It shows. He's made the improvements. And I really like what I'm seeing from Sanchez. I agree with Eli. Pitching's been really good. Braxton today got into a little bit of trouble. I don't think he was locating as best as he could early on in his 3 innings, but kind of settled it in those especially in the 3rd inning, but in the 2nd inning as well was good. So yeah, I asked him about the pitch clock and everything, and if that's getting to him. He said, I just got to get used to it. Maybe just switch my shoes from high tops to low tops or something so you can get on the rubber faster. So, stuff like that is things that guys are figuring out. They're adjusting. Again, don't take the record into account. Also saw some good things from the younger players today. Conine had put the Marlins ahead late in the game in the 8th inning, which was good to see. Mangum had 2 hits, who did not have a good approach early in the spring. Today was really good. So, yeah, a lot of things to see, even if the starters aren't in there. So today was fun. And yeah, you guys have had great coverage as well. So yeah, it's been a fun spring so far. Don't take the record into account. There's a lot to be happy about.
To take you through one moment in that game, as you mentioned, Conine put them ahead in the top of the 8th inning, and they added another run on top of that. I had to go leave for a quick errand right as that was happening. I cut the highlight of Conine's single. I scheduled a tweet that said Griffin Conine's game winner, and I scheduled it to go out when I knew the game would just be ending. And so then I went to do my errands, and I checked my phone, and I see immediately that Enrique Burgos gave up that lead immediately. So all of a sudden, for sure that's not going to be a game winner. But I couldn't change it from where I was at that particular time. I had to wait until I had to get all the way back. And thankfully, I got home right around the middle of the 9th. So I had time to delete the tweet.
Yeah, I really thought it was going to be a walk-off, honestly. Burgos really, really struggled with his control. Robert Garcia was also not very good. He's a depthier AAA guy, not very good with his control and command either. I thought when I think it was Groshans at third base made that throwing error. I think that they ruled it a throwing error, or maybe it was ruled a hit. I'm not sure. Pretty sure it was an error. But yeah, I thought that was it. I thought the game was over. I thought the guy was going to score from third or go from second to home. But yeah, I think I'm not going to say they got lucky to tie the game, but it could have definitely been a walk-off for sure for the Nationals. So.
And just to comment on LMF's question here in the chat about Peyton Burdick versus Jesus Sanchez. The thing with Sanchez is that he's out of minor league options. So even though these guys are of the same age, that they have some of the same strengths and weaknesses at this point, Sanchez is almost a lock for the opening day roster. They can't send him down to the minors unless exposing him to waivers and then another team would claim him. So he's going to be on the roster in some shape or form. That's been a fascinating discussion point, though, is like exactly what his role is going to be, because we think he's going to be in left field defensively, but is he going to be there every day because Brian De La Cruz needs at bats? I think that's the main question, is exactly how they're going to use Sanchez. Like, how is he going to be a true starter in left? And how much platooning comes into effect. We know that he's been awful against lefty pitching, especially last year. So Sanchez is going to be in the roster. Burdick is in the opposite position where he still has his minor league options remaining. So when it comes to that, it's not so much whether Jesus will be on the roster, but exactly how much they're going to use him.
And
yeah,
since we're kind of talking left field, sorry, Alex, you have to kind of mention Brian De La Cruz, as he did 2 minor league options left. I think you're going to try to really use those carefully. So I mean, I'm glad LMF mentioned him, Peyton Burdick. That guy's been looking really, really good. I mean, he's probably been one of the better performers throughout the first week or so of spring training. I believe he had a homer in the first game or the second game of spring training. He's been seeing the ball very well. He's been hitting very hard contact. And honestly, Brian De La Cruz, Jesus Sanchez, and Peyton Burdick all look pretty damn good. And Jorge Soler's looked good too. Had a homer today, which was a nuke, I heard, and it landed into the Astros facility. But just keeping left field as the priority here. It's going to be nice. It's going to be very interesting to see how you give all 3 of those guys playing time if Peyton Burdick plays in well enough for the playing time, because I don't think he was someone I was really high on entering spring training. Not that I wasn't expecting him to have a good spring. I think we all did, but man, I think he's exceeded the expectations so far early on. And it's going to be very interesting to see how left field plays out, because that's definitely a position, not that the team lacks because they have players to do it, but who will be playing probably the best defensively there. I don't doubt the bats of Jesus, De La Cruz, and Burdick. I think all 3 of those guys are going to be good offensively. Now it's just who provides you the best defense, and I guess that edge maybe probably goes to De La Cruz.
Yeah, and you're mentioning that. So I was just going to mention really quick. I don't know how we haven't got to this topic already. 13 minutes in, Mr. Paul McIntosh getting a hit and an RBI. Jim Callis mentioned he is a favorite in the organization. He's a favorite on Fish Stripes. Alex, tell me a little bit about PMAC's approach today against the Nats.
So, yeah, the first thing I'll say is that the run that the Nationals scored to tie the game, the Nationals runner actually ran into him and collided with him, and he didn't move a muscle. So, and the guy just like dropped, the runner just like dropped to the ground, and McIntosh just like looks at him and then walks to the pitcher. I don't know why the runner tried to do that or what he was thinking. But yeah, you're not going to get through Paul McIntosh. The guy's massive. Anyways, everybody was fine afterwards, by the way. So yeah, that guy's crazy. I've been talking about him for a little while. I'm glad that Jim and the folks at Pipeline finally decided to put him in the top 30, because I think he's deserved it for a little while. I'm glad they finally came to their senses about putting him into the top 30, because I think he deserves it. But yeah, no, it was his first hit of the spring today for him. You know, I've said about this player before. I think he's one of the strongest physically built players in the organization. It shows in his at bats. We saw, last spring where he was, taking sliders on the other side of the plate and ripping them to his freaking pull side. Like, the guy's really, really, really strong. He's a huge dude. He's a big target for pitchers. They like to throw to him. Does need to improve his defense if he wants to stick at catcher, per the Pipeline thing that we read. If you look at his scouting report in Pipeline, they say that the Marlins expect him to get worked at first base. They did that a little last spring. Didn't do it at all in the minor league season last year. He only played catcher and DH. So interesting development there that they are apparently going to try him at first base. Haven't seen it in spring training this year, but according to Pipeline, he's going to be worked out at first base, which the Marlins can definitely use that depth. But this guy's bat is something to keep an eye on. Really, really good. He has a good approach. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he wants to do with pitches. And he hits pretty much to all fields. And really, really, really strong. So I like this player a lot. He's a super cool dude. Rooting for this player. Undrafted guy. I like these underdog stories. You know me. I like these underdog stories like this. This guy's awesome. I like Paul a lot.
Yeah, and something interesting. I spoke to him the other day, and I asked him about this, if he's worked out at first base. He has worked out at first base. So I don't know how we haven't caught it, but he has. And he told me he is a catcher at first. That's what he's been told. And honestly, he's looked pretty good. Defensively, you could see. I want to really highlight that first game of spring training where he came in to catch Daniel Castano, who had probably the best outing out of all pitchers there that day. Maybe Brax looked just a little bit better, but Castano looked really good. And Paul was framing very, very well. Castano got a couple Ks thanks to McIntosh's framing. He's looked really, really good. And not he won't make the team, but he's going to be someone who maybe gets deep into spring training with the Marlins. And he'll start off with the team at AAA, and hopefully maybe we see him up at the major league level soon enough. And if it's at first, if it's at left field, wherever the team decides to put him in, this is the team that lacks first base depth right now. The closest you would get to a first baseman in the minor leagues is Troy Johnston. And I guess if you're considering Groshans a first baseman or part-time first baseman, which he's played a couple games there, that would be someone else. But McIntosh could probably give you a couple innings at first but we have to see it first. We saw it last year, I believe, in spring training. 1 inning. Didn't do too much there. So, offensively, I don't have any issues. He actually walks pretty well, too. So he gets on base at a pretty high rate. And it's just the defense right now. Just see where he fits best and how you could kind of contain consistency throughout every spot he plays. Because, one of the toughest positions is catcher. Having to call these games from start to finish and just frame, know how each defender aligns themselves and this and that. So we'll see. But I have high hopes for PMAC.
Yeah. To go back really quick, outside of PMAC, I love PMAC. But to go back really quickly before you finish the topic completely, Danny, on Sanchez, I think it's definitely really interesting. Obviously, like Eli said, I think we expect him to be on the team in some capacity because they're not going to risk losing the guy for nothing. So that guy definitely has a lot to offer. It's just, can he live up to it? Right. So what I would say is Peyton Burdick, as Kevin said, I think Peyton Burdick has had the best at-bats in spring training.
Yep.
Hands down, like even when he's out, it's 103, 102, 105. He hit one the other day. Got the homer to the opposite field, as Kevin also said. He's got, I think, objectively, in my opinion, and there's been a lot of good at-bats, but I think objectively that Burdick has had the best at-bats in spring training. What's interesting is that they're consistently putting him in center field. So they still want to rely on, trying to make him a usable center fielder, which I think he can do. I think he's better out there than Blade was. So I think he can do it. And the fact that they just consistently stick to it would definitely point to the fact that, yeah, Burdick can play left. That's his natural position, but Sanchez got to be on the team. But Skip's message today was that, man, this guy's not being handed anything. He knows he has to earn a spot, and he's doing well with it. So I think it's an interesting dynamic because both of those players, Sanchez and Burdick, have looked really good.
And I know people want to know, I'm sorry, Danny, about, Soler and Avi. Those guys have looked pretty good as well. Soler hit a homer today. Avi had one a couple days ago, hit a double, I believe it was, 109 miles per hour off the bat. That was the exit velo. Those guys are looking good. Avi's, slimmed down. Soler's looking good. These guys have been working out every single day throughout this offseason. I spoke to Soler in the offseason. They've been working every day. They're ready to go. So, the offense isn't looking the greatest right now, obviously, because you're kind of seeing not the full strength lineup. You're not seeing the opening day roster. They're going to get better. And I think, just day by day, game by game, you're going to keep going and they'll get adjusted to not even only the new rules, but just getting back into the swing of things. So there's a lot to be excited about despite the record. So just stay tuned, folks, because it's going to be a fun year.
That home run he hit today was like, I was looking down at my phone, I think, just looking at something on my phone when that pitch happened, and I heard the sound off the bat, and the press box, including Nationals reporters that were there, were just like, whoa. Like, everybody just, like, let out a resounding sound when he hit that baseball. absolutely destroyed off the facade of the Astros office building. Like, outfielders didn't move. Crazy. And he's looked good too. So yeah, I mean, I think somebody asked him, hey, did you know off the bat? He goes, yeah, pretty much. So actually, you know what? I'll correct myself. He actually at first said no. I didn't think it was gone off the bat, but I think he was being a little
Modest.
little
Modest.
Yeah.
modest.
Humble.
That was hammered, destroyed. So yeah, I think it was kind of being modest, but he should have known that was gone because it was massacred.
Yeah,
Sure.
it always a Stanton type homer, huh?
The I believe Kelly Sacco had said that it didn't quite hit the concrete sidewalk, but it had like definitely gone all the way to the back of the sloped grass on the center field, or left center field rather.
He's got crazy power.
Yeah, we complain once again that ballpark needs to hook itself up to StatCast.
Yes, it does.
Oh my god, yeah.
It does. Easy
It's a great ballpark.
I'm gonna say easy 400 feet at least on that home run. It was destroyed.
Yeah, and with that, we're talking about the hitting and everything. How about some of the pitching that we saw today, especially from the starter, Edward Cabrera? Had a nice 2-inning outing. What did you guys see from Edward? He's just working his way back and solidifying himself for the rotation.
This is a Carver one. He was there, although he did hit 98. So
right,
that's very encouraging.
Yeah. So I actually asked him about that after the game, and he was like, "That's just the way I throw. Like, I feel comfortable. I'm good." My question was like, "Hey, how comfortable are you with the effort that you're throwing with and all that stuff?" He goes, "That's just how I throw. I kind of expect it for myself." So it was a fun answer, but yeah, looked really good. Changeup looks really good. Fastball is, like you said, up 97, 98. I think he controlled and commanded pretty good today. I think he's doing well with the rule changes. He experienced them, I think, a little bit in AAA last year when he was like rehabbing or something like that, right? So not totally unfamiliar with them, which is good. So yeah, no, really good today. The velo is definitely there. He's built up. I mean, I think this guy is definitely ready. He's in an interesting situation too, with control and options and all that other stuff. So yeah, this guy's going to be in the rotation. I don't think there's a question about that. I think he's going to be back in rotation with what the Marlins have. But this guy is solid, and he looks really, really good and looks ready to go. So it was a good day for Edward.
Let me ask a question, because you just said it. Kyle Seeloff and Kelly Sacco said it on the radio stream this morning. Like, that's the second time you guys have brought up his options, like the fact that he's out of options. Like, to me, that's not even a question. That's not a concern. He's gonna be on the roster. Like, what like, was there conversation about him potentially not making the roster or like not being used as a starter? Like, why is that a talking point for so many people today? That, I don't know, it doesn't feel relevant to me. It's like he's gonna be he's gonna be one of the starting five in my eyes.
It's kind of
am I wrong? Am I wrong?
I'll let Eli take this.
Yeah, as Gabriel brings up in the chat, he's talking about Braxton and how these guys are related. Where with Braxton, he of course has his options left, and his stuff is not at the same level as Edwards. But when it comes to performance, and this is a team putting a lot of emphasis on performance this year, at least if you look at the peripheral stats last year, you can make the case that Braxton was as good as Edward was. Maybe not in the ERA department, but in terms of keeping the ball in the ballpark and being consistent start to start. Then in terms of performance, are we positive? If you want to move out the sample, I think you get a better idea of Edward looking at the last 2 seasons combined than just the last one. And if you look at the last 2 seasons, his whole major league career to this point, it's not like slam dunk top 5 starter of a team trying to win right now. So I think that's the only reason why it was brought up in the first place. That being said, I wouldn't say that there's ever been any concern about having him make the team in one way or another. I think the better question is if they go with a conventional 5-man rotation coming out of spring training and they decide that all their top 6 starting candidates deserve to be on the roster, then somebody gets put into this fluid long man role for an indeterminate period of time. And I think a fair question is whether Edward would be somebody that goes into a long man role for whatever time until there's a rotation opening. One big part of that would be to limit his workload. This is a guy that has never come close to pitching a full-length major league season before. I think if everything goes well for him this year, I don't know if they want him to make 32 starts. Maybe it has more to do with that as to why this has even been a talking point as to whether he would be the one that makes the most sense to open up in that relief role in that particular set of circumstances. But I think all things considered, there's not much doubt that his upside is immense. That I think there were individual starts last year that were some of the most amazing individual performances of any Marlins pitcher. So he's certainly going to get a lot of starting opportunities this year. And I think very likely he's going to get them from the start of the season. This is just preparing for a more creative approach, potentially, if Braxton and Trevor Rogers, if they really solidify themselves as deserving of being in the rotation, would Edward be the one that's put into that fluid role as a
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you saw it today. This guy you talk about Braxton, who I like Braxton, and you talk about Trevor Rogers. This guy's got the best stuff of those three pitchers that Eli just mentioned. He has the best stuff. That's there's just no question. This guy has the best stuff. He's got the hard velo. He's got a good changeup. He's got a good breaking ball. This guy's good. The only thing that worries me with how hard this pitcher throws and his injury history is that he's not going to remain healthy. So that's the only thing you really worry about. But if he's fully healthy, which he said today that he is, and he looks it, then yeah, this guy's going to be like Noah saw him walking with the trainer chase. Like, oh my God. I'm like, no, I think he's okay. So yeah, you just kind of really worry about this guy's health and his ability to stay healthy because of his past. But if he can get past that and stay healthy, then he's going to be here and he's going to be starting. So for Braxton, to answer that question that was on the screen, he was good today. Kind of struggled in his first inning. Last two innings were decent. Third inning was really good. Kind of settled in. So what I'll say for him is that he does have an option year left. So it's probably going, if they want to stick to him as being a starter, which I think he can be a starter still as well, then he'll probably be in AAA to start the year. But that would be my projection. Nothing definite.
And I think we haven't mentioned this guy at all, but Dax Fulton, I know a lot of Marlins fan just mentioned him. It's his first game. Let's kind of, pump the brakes. He looked all right. Velo was all right. Just give him another start. He'll probably start in a couple days. Not start, but come in relief in a couple days. And we'll just go from there. And I know, again, you guys mentioned the 6-man rotation in the comments. It's just a matter of time. I don't think they'll do it. I'm almost certain they won't. And it's kind of like what I think Eli will mention with Brax. I mean, just more of a swing man type of guy who will put spot starts in, give more guys rest. And I don't think 6-man is likely unless, Brax and Edward just end up performing very, very well towards the end, but I doubt it.
I like how Gabriel spelled Seeloff, Kyle Seeloff.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything.
Yeah. You don't have to worry about spelling. Yeah, but for the people at home, there's an extra F there and there's an A in there. But he's referring to Kyle Seeloff. Yeah. Carry on.
Another thing, because Kevin mentioned swingman, I'm mentioning the name because I want to, and you guys are going to hear it. Brian Hoeing had one of the best relief appearances of the spring yesterday, Wednesday. So, yeah. That guy, a lower down name, not a name you would normally think about. His velo's up. He looks good. He's bigger and stronger. He said he gained weight.
It was impressive.
You guys all make fun of me for liking Brian Hoeing, but
you're not wrong.
Nardi.
To set the record straight, Hoeing early last year, there were very encouraging signs from him. When he dominated AA, he shot up to AAA. There was reasons to be excited with him. For whatever reason, middle of the year, at AAA and then obviously in the majors, something went awry with the way that he was pitching and the way that hitters were handling him. That doesn't mean that it's the end of his career. The Marlins were able to squeeze him off the 40-man at the end of the year. Nobody claimed him. So his stock was down at the end of the season. But as much as we tease Alex Carver about his hope and optimism for Hoeing, it's not entirely misplaced. There is a scenario where Hoeing, at the very least, what he's shown in the past is ability to eat innings. And it would not be surprising at all if he does make some starts for this Marlins team this year. What's going to happen in those starts, I don't know, but it cannot be any worse than last year. There's no way to go but up in terms of what it looks like at the major league level.
Yeah, but at that point,
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm saying at that point, like if he's making 5, 7, 10 starts in a season, the season's over. Like, yes, you can give him the upside, you can give him time to develop and show he's his god. But if he's making 5 to 10 starts in a season, like the season's done.
Yeah. And with that, I think it's a great time to have a break. Alex going to get, I don't know what he's going. I think he's trying to figure out more stats for Brian Hoeing. But when we're back from the break, we're going to be talking about the number one thing everyone is worried about, defense. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
And we are back. So, guys, let's talk about the thing that has the whole fan base up in arms, and that is the defense. With the new formation of the defense, Segura third, Wendell shortstop, just everyone seemingly almost out of position with the lineup. We saw it opening day of spring training. We saw a couple situations there with Segura bobbling the ball a couple times, Arias missing a ball off his glove, and the infamous deke by Jazz Chisholm Jr. Let's go with Kev. Kev, tell me a little bit what you've seen so far from this Marlins defense. Oh, you're muted. Okay. Oh, there you go.
There you go. I think outside of the first game, they've looked all right after, except Jazz. Arise kind of getting in there. Segura looked really rough. I mean, it looked really bad that first opening game, the home opener, I must say. After that, it's just been a lot of miscues. I think Jazz is just more of getting adjusted out there. He's been able to make the routine plays. Now it's just, can you make the right throws at the right times? I mean, we saw that Boston game. Supposedly, he was trying to get the cutoff man. I respect Jazz. I think he's a great player, but he was not trying to get the cutoff man. He was trying to ding that thing right to home plate to get him out. He did not. I don't remember it raining in Jupiter the day of. He said it was slippery. Maybe there were sprinklers been put out before the game. I don't know, but it's been rough for Jazz. I mean, overall, just kind of getting the ball down to home plate, getting it to the right spots. I mean, he can make the catches. That's great. I've seen them, and we're gonna see them on Saturday. And I'm going to see him on Saturday at least. And it's all right. It's more of a growing pain, not just for Jazz, but the team as a whole. I mean, you just saw today with Garrett Cooper and Brax. They had their issue there. Arise has had his couple issues. Joey Wendell, I guess, is the lone man who hasn't had too many issues, I must say, from what I've seen at least. So if he's out there looking good and playing well, there's not much more to say there. And he's probably been the best infielder so far for the Marlins, unless, I mean, I'm just not remembering one because I know Groshans even had his issues at first base, but there's not much you could do when the guy's only played 5 career games at first prior to playing first base the other day. So, I mean, besides that, it's just a growing pain. I know it's an overreaction, not an overreaction. It's what we expected. It's just as advertised. The defense is just as advertised. I think that's the best way to put it. And there's time. Luckily, and that's what spring training is for, to make these mistakes right now and hopefully not have them during the regular season. And if you want to look at a defense that really did struggle throughout the season, look at the Phillies. I mean, that was really bad. And I'm not going to say the Marlins are as good as the Phillies because it's not even close. But if you want to look at a situation, you can look at the Phillies, and they made the World Series. So, again, not saying the Marlins are going to even crack the playoffs, but they're going to go through this type of growing pain that the Phillies went through. And towards the end of the year, they looked all right. And towards the end of the playoffs, they looked decent. They didn't look good, but they looked mediocre. And that's what I would keep it at. Because if the Marlins could play league average defense, you feel really good about, the offense putting up enough runs to, I guess, just keep up with other teams. And that's what they're trying to do, contact hitting. That's why they brought in Arise, Segura, have Wendell playing short. So there's time. That's kind of the point. It's very early in spring training. There's time left, folks. And there you have it. Look, Jazz. Let's hope. I think he caught the ball.
Right. Just to get everybody caught up, in case there are some normal people out there that don't actually follow every single spring training game. there have been two notable Jazz screw ups. So the first one was in his very first game playing in center field at Roger Dean, where it was a broken bat, soft fly ball that hung up in the air a while that he got a bad read on. He took at least one step back, if not more, then tried to run in. Then he was so far away from making up ground that he kind of slowed down, and it landed maybe 10 feet in front of him in left center field. A play that I thought would be extremely catchable had he gotten a better read off the bat. It was a broken bat, so it wasn't like an automatic play, but it raises a red flag immediately right there. Then the other one more recently was on a single up the middle with a runner on second base. It took a while for the ball to get to him, so by that point, it was essentially guaranteed that the runner was going to score. I don't remember who the runner was, but it was a very fast runner that got a good read on the ball. It was clear that there was no play at the plate. And Jazz, who really his biggest weakness as a center fielder, beyond just the inexperience, his arm strength is below average. So it was surprising that he even made the decision to throw home. And trying to overcompensate for his lack of arm strength, he throws it as hard as he possibly can. It not only misses the cutoff man, but it goes over everybody's head, and it allows the guy who got the hit to move up an extra base. I assume that was charged an error. Regardless, it was just a huge mistake to make that throw when there was no play to be made at home plate. So, and that was the one where he gave the excuse about the field potentially being wet and him just not having a good grip on the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's not what he intended to do, but it was really the decision in the first place that raises the concern, not the execution. It's about the decisions here that show, even though he's immensely talented, it's certainly possible in the future that he is a solid center fielder, but to see these two types of situations and completely different plays, it just underscores how many things he needs to learn and how many things he needs to adjust to in real-time settings. There's simply not enough time to get him up to being a well-rounded center fielder by opening day. His tools are going to allow him to make some of the plays out there, but this has been a sobering dose of reality that this is going to be a weakness for the team defensively. No matter how his intentions are, there's simply not enough reps to get him caught up. If these kind of obvious mistakes are happening, it's just unrealistic to see him figuring it all out in the course of a few weeks. So that's unfortunate, and you wonder exactly if that will compel the Marlins to do something, to make some sort of move. I'm not talking about Brian Reynolds. I'm talking about bringing potentially some other veteran major league center fielder in a bench role or just a platoon role, or somebody to share the load with Jazz, because if he's playing center field every single day, it's going to cost them a whole lot of runs. There's really no way around that.
And just imagine how this will translate to Lone Depot Park, which is a lot bigger and a lot harder to play. Maybe one of the hardest center fields to play in Major League Baseball. So let's just hope Jazz get out. Not many baseballs go Jazz's way. And that's, I think,
the interesting thing too about that whole thing, what Kevin just said, Roger Dean's a big outfield too, but Lone Depot's also big, inside. Yeah. You have the lights, you have everything else that you have to navigate in Lone Depot. He's not getting exposure to any of that in spring training at all. So the environment also needs to be taken into account here. Like some things that he's going to be dealing with at Lone Depot, they can't replicate them in spring training because they just can't do it. So what I will say for this is that overall, the message from Skip has been, and I said this today, I did a small news and notes article from spring, from a couple of the things that I've seen and heard. What he said basically was he wants those things to happen in spring training. He wants those things to happen during games because those are things that you can't replicate during practice or batting practice or whatever it may be. So that's a good message to send. Like in spring training, you want these things to happen. So because you want to see how the player's going to deal with it. How has Jazz dealt with them himself? I mean, those two plays that Eli is talking about, not good. But that's what you want to see happen so that the player is exposed to it. So it's a good message from Skip. I'm glad that Jazz is getting the experience or some of the experience that he needs in order to try to handle this very demanding position. But like Eli said, and like I said about the environment and the elements and stuff like that, it's going to be really hard for them to get him 100% prepared to play an effective center field at Lone Depot Park. Where do they go from there? remains to be seen. But
You know,
yeah, it's going to be difficult for them to get him 100% ready.
and I'm kind of glad LMF mentioned this. The sun, yeah, exactly. That's not going to be an excuse. So these excuses
Right.
he's making now
No,
will
no,
not
well,
be
I think
valid.
you're misinterpreting. What he's saying is that in Lone Depot, it's turf, so the grass can't be wet. And because
That's
the
what I'm
roof is
saying.
going to be
Yeah.
closed almost every game, the sun's not going to
Yeah,
be
that's what I
there.
wanted to get to. That the
Okay.
excuses he's making right now will not be valid when you start the regular season at Lone Depot Park. So I don't know what excuse he's going to mention this time if he messes up, and I don't know. It's just
Yeah,
going to be very
I'm just
difficult
saying
to
the
see what
positive
Jazz is.
spin on that is that if these were really the reasons why he made those misplays, that playing in Lone Depot Park,
Shouldn't be an
those
issue.
are not going to hurt him. Those aren't going to be
Yeah.
factors. So maybe if it's under perfect conditions, maybe he is a more like usable defensive player. I think that's an optimistic spin. We're gonna just have to see him make some of these. We're gonna have to see him make more of these routine plays over the course of spring in order to feel confident about him right now. Just because we haven't seen him make like, yeah, this it's still. I'm still worried.
There's also recency bias too. Like, what the guy's going to make one diving play in center field because he's athletic and he's good and he has the tools, like you said, and then everything's going to be forgotten and everything's going to be great. But you're right. There's a lot to do here with making him the player that he needs to be to fully be able to handle a full slate of games in center field.
And you kind of hope that guys like Burdick, De La Cruz, those guys you've been seeing in center field for the Marlins so far, you hope that they're pretty good enough to where if Jazz is not playing that day, they could hold it down pretty well. And if Jazz ends up at some point going back to second base, that's going to be the replacement. So you hope a guy like De La Cruz or Peyton Burdick could hold it up to the point where it gives the Marlins time to find a new guy. If it's a Ramon Laureano, like the chat mentioned once, which that wouldn't even be a bad option, or you go out there and I don't even know what free agents are still left out there. You would have to make a trade probably to bring someone in.
Jackie
Profar's still
Bradley
out there.
Jr. just signed with the Royals, so he's out of the board. And then someone else signed recently.
Oh,
Jackie Bradley Jr.
Yeah.
I don't want to make any excuses for the defense. I obviously, I think Isaac threw out a tweet at the beginning of his camp saying, "What's the headline you're most interested in?" My instinct was all the guys that are playing out of position. Like, how's the defense going to fare up? But and someone in the chat, and it was highlighted in the stream. Someone said, like, "Are you guys worried if he's still making these mistakes by April or May?" And I'm thinking to myself, is that so bad? Like, if by May he's still making mistakes, but he's getting better. Like, is the bag good enough to offset the average or below average glove? To have the flexibility in the rest of the field to have also good bats. The Luis Arraez that they brought in, you can't play him at. You would want to play him at first, but we're kind of like got Kerry Cooper, and you can't play him at DH because you got Jorge Soler. So if Jazz gives you the defensive versatility and his bat is popping off, or even better than what we saw last year, because as Marlins Maniac will tell you, he was injured last year, so you expect things to be better from him. I laugh as well. I'm just quoting I'm quoting another tweet. Like, it's in my eyes, it's not the worst thing. He'll make mistakes. You gotta just hope that he's able to make the routine plays, or that just like we saw with the Phillies last year, that enough pitching and enough offense can cover for defense. And I don't know if you guys saw that article, that I don't know if it was article or like analysis that came out, that like the Phillies realized that Nick Castellanos was better going forward to his left, so they brought him back and to the right more often so that he could always target his strong side. If they get enough metric on Jazz, and he's able to like find a way to kind of cheat or like shortcut his a quality center fielder out of him, like Kevin was saying, the market for center fielders is tapped. He's what you got. It's him or De La Cruz, and
yeah,
right. And something I want to mention with the designated hitter is that it's not going to be Soler every day. I mean, we saw Skip mention. I don't know who asked this, but I know it was mentioned. It may have been you, Carver, or someone else, but they were asked if Soler is the designated hitter every day, and he said no. Soler will play left field most of the time, or not most of the time, but a good amount. And we'll be seeing guys who need a rest day be put at designated hitters. So if Cooper is that one day out and he's playing, he's the DH, you would put Arise there, and I guess Birdie would be your second baseman, or eventually Groshans is on the major league team. You could put him there, or Amaya if he's there. But I don't want Amaya at second, so it probably would be.
The last thing to say on defense, and I know we talked long on Jazz, but this is the last I'll say on defense. Like Skip also said that it's not just Jazz that they're trying to get the most out of at different positions. And he mentioned Groshans that Kevin just brought up. Like, he's playing third base and first base. I mean, he played third base today when he came into the game. I will say another really bad mistake that I know a lot of you guys didn't see because this game was not on TV, but another really bad mistake that happened today, unfortunately, that I have to point out is bottom of the ninth. It could either be a tie game or a Nationals walk-off, and Groshans made a play that made it look like it was going to be a Nationals walk-off. There were runners at, I think, first and second, I'm pretty sure, or maybe just a runner at second, I forget. Basically what he did was, no, it was runners at first and second, so it was a forced play at third. So runners at first and second, ground ball goes to him. He gets the ball, steps on third base as he's going off to his left, and then threw across his body. He should not have made the throw. The throw was way off. He was trying to end. I know he was trying to end the inning. It could have been a double play. It would have taken an amazing throw from even a tenured third baseman to get that runner. So he shouldn't have made the throw. He should have ate it and taken the out. And he made a really bad throw that went all the way into shallow right field and could have easily ended the game if that runner that was at first base was a little bit faster, because he even turned the corner at third looking like he was maybe going home. So those are the kind of mistakes you need to clean up. I mean, that's a game-deciding situation, whether it's spring training or not. It's a game-deciding situation and a really bad decision by Groshans. So those are things we're trying to clean up. It's not just Jazz. There's other players as well that are working on things. Johnston at first base is another one who's looked kind of I don't like to talk bad about Troy Johnston because he's my boy, but he's not really looked great at first base. So there's other players in the equation here. We can talk about PMAC at catcher. There's another one, right? So there's a couple things in the equation here that are going into this. It's not just Jazz, but seems to be something that's going on. When players go to new positions, this is going to happen. So it's not just Jazz. There's a couple other players here as well.
And we're still yet to see Nick Fortes play first. And we know that was mentioned by Kim early on in the offseason, the day Miggy Rowe got traded. We're still yet to see him play first base. I would like to see it in the next couple of weeks. And now that I'm looking at the lineups, Garrett Hampson's another guy who we could possibly see kind of fill in for center field. Now, if he's starting for your team, that's kind of an issue. But
have we seen Encarnacion at first base, Kevin? Do you know?
Yes, he played first base. Okay. I think it was the Boston game, right, Eli?
Okay.
He came off the bench. Yeah, he played in the later innings. He didn't start there. He finished the game there.
He should start a game, in my opinion. But whatever.
One reason why I put up these lineups. I put this up to underscore the fact that they've had a different DH for every single game thus far, and I think that just aligns with the messaging that they are going to be rotating people in there. Even if Soler is the most commonly used DH this season, at least while he's healthy, the plan seems to be using him quite a bit in left field in order to give other quality hitters in the lineup that half day off when they need it over the course of the season. Last year, it was a very simple situation. It was just Cooper and Aggie every single day, just alternating back and forth between first base and DH. That was very weird, and it didn't work out particularly well. It seems at least one of them I know performed way worse on days when he was a DH. So this year, this is going to be less regimented. It's going to be more flexible, and we'll see as the season goes on exactly how that plays out.
Yeah, and now that we have the lineups up, I want to do something a little fun, go over some of these lineups. I want each of you to tell me what lineup you like the best. Eli put this tweet out there for Fish Stripes, and it got some really good traction. I thought it'd be a great topic for this stream. Not really like predictions, but kind of in that same vein. Kev, tell me a little bit about which lineup you really like the best here.
Before you start, are you asking about order or positional the lineup? Or
everything. Just when you see that lineup, tell me like what you like about it.
Okay.
Your personal favorite on the list.
I mean, I guess the obvious one would be the 26, the one we saw the other day. So I'll go with that one. Obviously, with some changes still needed to be made, but I like the one we saw today.
I would say for me, I'm a personal fan of March 1st. I really like that one a lot. I like Arias, De La Cruz, Jazz Chisholm. I think that one's not that bad. I think that one's pretty good, maybe the best of the bunch. But I would also go with February 28th. Also, if because I really like those two. I think those two, back to back, are really great. I know 28th, Austin Allen doesn't really stand out, but to me, Garrett Cooper first base is. I like that there. Luis Arias, I think, has to lead off. I think he has to be the leadoff guy for the Marlins going forward. Horst Soler DH is probably where I would put him. Jeet Segura really there at the bottom, and Gerardo Encarnacion really with some power there at the end. And Eli, what lineup of these do interest you the most? Tickles you the most?
Oh boy.
These are not fun lineups.
No, I guess I'll stick with February 26th, the second game, where it was pretty close to what you expect opening day, with the exception of Girard probably being either Sanchez or DLC in there. I really dislike the lineups where they're trying to make Groshans a first baseman. One thing I wanted to underscore about that is, like, the main question with him is his power production, because it has not throughout most of his professional career shown up, despite the size that he has, and he added even more size this coming off season. With that in mind, like, for somebody that already has questions about whether his bat is good enough to justify third base in a corner infield spot, the threshold for him to be a viable big leaguer, and especially a starter, is even higher at first base. I don't think that's the answer. I don't when it comes to what other alternatives they have there besides Cooper. And to this point, he's played the second most innings at first base, I think, behind Cooper. Him, and then Joe Rizzo has now played several games there as well. Joe Rizzo, we don't expect to be a factor, at least for the first half of the year, or probably unlikely the second half of the year. Groshans being ahead of him on the depth chart. I understand they invested a lot in him, and that they're naturally going to try to find ways to get him playing time and to make him as valuable as possible. I don't think using him at first base is the move. So that's the one. When that's in the lineup, that's when I know that I'm in a bad mood just from seeing that one decision right there.
Alex?
Be careful, Eli. You know the Marlins. They'll have Joe Rizzo in the lineup by mid-June.
The February 25th lineup is going to be that August 28th lineup.
Please. For mine, I'm going to say February 28th is my favorite out of all of these. Yeah. I do like, your best on-base guy's got to lead off. Your best on-base guy is Luis Arias. The guy hits for average, and he has a good approach. I think that's got to be your leadoff hitter. Arias has to be a leadoff hitter. I agree with you, Danny. I like your best hitter hitting third. Jazz Chisholm is the best hitter on the team, in my opinion. So Jazz Chisholm hits third. You got the power in the middle with Avi and Cooper. And then kind of balance. I mean, even if you slot in Sanchez at what is that, 8? If you slot in Sanchez at 8 for Gerardo Encarnacion, it's still good because you got some thump there at the end of the lineup as well. And then you got some more on base there in the middle with Wendell and Segura. So yeah, so speed with Segura too. So I like that lineup. Obviously, you probably swap out Stallings or Fortes for Austin Allen in that situation. But if that, with those changes that I just said made, is the opening day lineup, I am totally fine with that. So I will go with the 28th as my best one so far.
Quickly to comment on something that Gabriel mentioned in the chat about Jazz batting third, which Carver also mentions. The thing with Jazz last year that really stuck out is when he was in the leadoff spot, that's when his production was at its worst for whatever reason. And I don't think there's much a difference at all between these hitters psychologically where they are in the lineup, with the exception of being a leadoff hitter. That is a very particular type of assignment, and also based on how your lineup is constructed, where the base out situations can be a lot different in the leadoff spot than anywhere else. If you have a thin lineup for whatever reason, or on particular days where you're using more defensive-minded players at the bottom of your lineup, like the leadoff hitter is going to bat with the bases empty so much more often. They're not going to have there's some benefits that come with batting with runners on base. For whatever reason, to this point in his career, the splits for Jazz as a leadoff hitter versus any other spot in the lineup, they seem to be pretty significant. For a player that has so much offensive upside, I think you want to take that into account when you're putting together a lineup and try to come up with anybody else that you really like in that spot in order to keep Jazz where he should be, which I agree. You want him either in the second spot or the third spot, ideally. So it's just a question of the supporting cast around you. because
And it's a little. Sorry,
you
go
need
ahead.
to have other players that complement each other in order to bring out the ideal situation for Jazz. Everybody else actually has to do their job as well.
Yeah, and something I wanted to quickly mention is that I'm a little bit surprised Gene Segura isn't higher in the lineup. I know I could see why he's down there. We saw him last year there with Philadelphia, and that's where he's played almost most of his career, or hit most of his career, which is 6, 7, 8. But you would assume with an offense that's not as good as that, you would see more, 2, 3, maybe, maybe 5. But it's okay. I mean, that's kind of where I expected. That's where I expected him to be. But I wouldn't mind seeing him maybe take some leadoff shots one day.
Yeah. Navi, give us some of your wisdom on your lineups real quick.
I guess I'll pick and choose a couple of things you guys said. Just echo that. I agree with I mean, first of all, the 28th, that's my lineup. I like 1 through 6, 1 through 7. I would switch, De La Cruz or Sanchez in left. The catcher is going to be Fortes is my guy, but you can't take Stallings out of there. I agree exactly with what Carver said on Arraez is your best on BSP guy. Jazz is your best hitter, so that's third. I'd like the Jorge Soler at second. It seems kind of counterproductive because you want to play like a good power hitter, especially if he can hit 20, 30 home runs lower down. But I think historically, even though Soler has a low batting average, he almost always has like 90 to 100 points higher of an OBP. So putting him second, giving him putting him second to me feels right. Garrett Cooper is, which we know when he'll hit. If he is the 2-a-day Cooper that JP Arencibia dubbed him in May and June, maybe you put him at second in the lineup. And I went last, so I had time to start looking things up. I was looking at the splits for Luis Arraez, and he's actually much better. I mean, smaller sample size, but he hit 80 points higher on his batting average, batting second and batting first. So if you can find a better leadoff hitter, maybe Luis Arraez slides down to 2, keep Jazz at 3, Soler 4. You can play with it. Kevin was right. Maybe Gene Segura comes up, but if you get what you maybe not expect, but if you get what we signed, obviously,
Same thing.
Don't make me laugh. Obviously, Garcia for him at 5 is totally fine. But to me, it's the 28th, and you can slide things around. But that's my lineup, the 28th.
The only thing with Soler, and I was looking at that too when I saw him second in that lineup. Yeah, you're right. Historically, he has that really good OBP, like 340, 350, right? It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But you just really, really hope if you do stick him there that the rebound is really real.
Absolutely. Hey, and if
last year he had 30% K rate, and it was not good. So
and if you get that automatic single from Arraez, and that's all you're gonna get, you're only gonna get singles. But if you get an automatic single and a nice, easy Soler home run, you're up on the board 2-0, 2 batters into the game, and you can cruise from there. So if that's what you get, that's fine with me. I don't mind.
And his walk rates are good too.
Yeah, exactly.
11% walk rate.
Exactly.
You want your best you want your best on-base guy to hit first, but then you also want an on-base guy in the second position. I think Soler can do it as long as the bounce back is real. And from what we saw today with that home run, it looks pretty good.
If Soler's comeback isn't real, if Avisail Garcia's comeback isn't real, that changes a lot. You slide Gene Segura up. Yeah. You maybe try John Birdie up there. You maybe try Wendell up there. You gotta play around. But if the season's gonna be a success, it's gonna be because you're getting that comeback season from Soler and from Garcia, and that everyone else is taking a step forward as well.
More runs.
Situation to have. This is a good situation to have, all this movement. So I know Eli had something.
I think I said something that piqued Eli's interest.
Right. So you said it's only a successful season if those guys bounce back. You're probably right about that. I think
Absolutely.
In the event that one or both of them do not, it's going to be so critical for Skip to adjust in terms of playing time. Just because these guys have the biggest contracts, or just because they're on the roster, just because they're healthy, does not mean they should be everyday players. Doesn't mean they should be close to everyday players if they're not performing that way. And they think they're in this moment where they actually have a large number of competent hitters, and what's most important isn't so much people love to get obsessed about the batting order, but what matters most ultimately is who is taking those plate appearances and who is on the field. And that continues to be, no matter how you rearrange this, it's going to be so important to always have the 9 best offensive players you can in that lineup at any particular time. And I think that's one thing that the old coaching staff and Don Mattingly kind of struggled with. They're kind of just throwing crap at the wall a lot of the times in terms of trying to configure it and get as much run production as they could out of the players that they had. You want to coach them as best as possible, put them, do everything you can to make sure these guys are like just good again. But there's the other elements of that is also just picking the players and putting them in the right situations, not being blinded by their history, not being blinded by their contracts, just focusing on putting the best players on the roster on the field at that particular time. For a team that is trying to win, the way that you do that is by putting these guys in their optimal matchups and by putting them on the field when you feel they can actually help you out.
That's something I'm fascinated to see, Eli, is that if the old pastime of lineup goes up and everybody on Marlins Twitter is freaking out about Don Mattingly, I am fascinated to see if that translates to Skip. I hope it doesn't, but we'll see.
I guess that kind of answers a question I was going to have, because I can remember, and I know all of you guys will know the answer to this. Are the Marlins one of those teams that the lineup is set by the front office and the manager just writes it on the lineup card? Like, I can't remember if the lineup construction is done by the front office and the front office, like Kimming is still there, whoever's the analyst that's doing that is still there, do you expect anything to change like from the Donnie days? Like, I don't remember the situation.
I did want to clear something up about Donnie down the stretch, because he sparked a lot of interest when he said late in the season that the lineups were set like many days in advance and being given to him. I wanted to specify that happened when the team was out of contention and when it was being done just to ensure players got a certain number of playing time. When they had that window with a bunch of the veterans hurt, and it was almost all players with less than 2 years of service time, where it was so heavily rookies. It was Blade, and it was Burdick, and it was Gerard, and it was Nick Fortes playing more often. That was about playing time rather than optimal, putting together the best possible team.
So we trust that these are Skip's lineups, is what you're saying.
I think your question is, was that happening all year? And I would also say no. That was not happening all year. So it was probably happening late because, like Eli said, just wanted to get guys some reps and playing.
You could probably make the assumption after Blade was called up is kind of when you started seeing this change. Although they were in it for like another week after, but it was I would say it was when Blade got called up.
All right. I think with that, over an hour in, no prediction time. I think maybe next week we'll have a good prediction time with the WBC right around the corner. So hopefully we get everyone in here and have a great one for that. But Navi, I will do it for you. I don't think you'll be here for that one. So do you have a prediction for the WBC?
The Czech Republic, Czechia. That's my team.
With the firefighters
it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm talking to a Czech girl. Nothing at all.
Isaac's not here for one stream.
Just mention Jaromir Jagr. Navi, just mention Jaromir Jagr. You're good to go.
Oh, man. So I think with that, with Navi's really, really, really bold prediction, and if he does that, then I think everyone's going to be rich on that front. Myself, Daniel, Kevin, Eli, Alex, Navi. This is Fish Stripes Live. Always go fish.